Hey, we all love music, right? If you're a part of this planet, there's a good chance you do. After all, 93% of the human population listens to music. But I want you to forget about the music for a second. There's another part that often gets overlooked, especially in the streaming era we are in now. And that's the album cover. See, back in the day when music only existed in a physical format, the album cover was just as important as the music. So as a fan of all things art, in today's video I want to take a look at some cool covers. Now, why should you even care about the album art? Because in my opinion it is an extension of the music itself. Without album covers, there wouldn't be anything to make you want to buy the album or hit play on Spotify. It's arguably 50% of the experience. If the cover doesn't convince you to listen to an artist you don't know, then unless it's a recommendation from a friend, you probably never will. See, back in the day, vinyl records just came in blank sleeves with some lettering on it at most. It wasn't until the late 30s when Columbia Records hired graphic designer Alex Steinweiss that albums began to have art attached to their identity. And from that point on, it exploded as a staple in the culture, so luckily I don't have to spend too long giving a history lesson. So let's get into looking at the art itself. I'm going to spend the rest of this video taking an opinionated look at various covers I both know of and have found online during my research for this video. I'm going to cover albums both big and small from all sorts of genres. Just remember that at the end of the day, all art is subjective. But I'm pretty confident in the fact that by the time this video is over, you will have seen at least one cover you enjoy. First, we have the deluxe cover for Freddy's Inferno by Freddie Dredd. This cover is a perfect example of contrast. I love how you have the dark background with these bright purple flames, and the focal point of the image being the two hooded figures. It seems like something you'd see on a skateboard, to be honest, and it's just so nice to look at. Next up is Television by 99 Neighbors. I absolutely love this cover. For some reason, the imagery of an old CRT TV floating in an ocean of what seems to be blood is just so captivating. It's rather simplistic as far as covers go in my opinion, but it leaves a lot up to the imagination, and I really like that. Like if I saw this vinyl in a record shop, it gives off the vibe of one of those albums that would just stick with you. Artists really need to do more experimental stuff like this often. Next is a newer release, being Cynthia by Sydney Ross Mitchell. One of my friends sent me this album cover while I was researching covers to include, and oh my god, I don't care if the music on this EP never becomes iconic. This cover deserves to be. I love the graininess of this image that makes it feel like a memory, the DIY style of the way it's set up, and the blank, almost lifeless stare on Sydney's face. This cover is simply beautiful in so many ways I lack the time to even explain here. Also, the dark background and the mechanical bull work so perfectly with the brightness of her dress and the star. I could literally stare at this for hours. There's something about it that's so dreamlike and ethereal. Next is Igor by Tyler the Creator. Now, I'm purposely trying not to include a bunch of cover art that's iconic and popular because I like to shine a light on smaller projects, but the Igor cover is just iconic as fuck in my opinion. I love the pink on it and how Tyler looks like he was poorly cut out with a pair of scissors, the use of grayscale and that deadpan stare on his face with his eyes being a very bright, piercing white. It's almost haunting to look at, and I think that was the intention. Now for a personal favorite of mine, Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. This cover is just so beautifully painted and has an exceptional use of color. Unlike his more traditional albums, he went in more of an avant-garde and funk direction with his jazz playing this time, and the album art reflects that so well. From the muted, almost drab colors of the ocean and clouds, to the bright and in-your-face flaming flower, it almost seems like it could be the cover to a book as well. There's just so much emotion conveyed in this single image. It's like it's telling you directly that if you play this album, you're going to go on a wild journey. And that is 100% true. Now I want to highlight a cover from one of my personal favorite artists because, well, it's my video, and that's The Other Lands by Sewer Person. The reason I wanted to highlight this one in particular is because unlike most cover art in existence, Sewer Person actually made this cover himself, and there's something about his simplistic yet experimental art style that I find so interesting. This cover is just three mysterious-looking blindfolded dudes in hats and cloaks, and that genuinely gives me cultist vibes. Also, it low-key reminds me of graffiti, but not like the type you'd spray on a wall. It's more like the type you'd scribble on a sticker and throw up on a street sign. Next we have What Could Possibly Go Wrong by Dominic Fike. Not only is this my personal favorite album by Dominic, but oh my god, this is one of the best covers I have ever seen. I love the colors and the lighting of this shot and the angle they shot this at, making the mountains stand front and center in this foreboding way. It legitimately could be a movie poster, that's how fucking well done this is. The only critique I do have about this cover is the fact that the title's color bleeds to the right. I think it would be a stronger color if that wasn't there and the lettering was just left alone. But at the same time, I love the car headlights illuminating the ground while being out of view, and I love the way Dominic is off-center. Okay, I think it's time for another popular and iconic cover, that being Metaphorical Music by Nujabes. This cover is just straight up art. I love anything abstract art related, and this is an example of it that's so good you could easily hang this up in a museum. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't in one already. There's something about the way the colors are twisting and flowing together. For a static image, there's a lot of movement going on. Also, it's almost like a Dr. Seuss book in how it's drawn. Not gonna lie, I feel like if I stared at this for long enough, I'd start seeing the Who's. And while we're on the topic of popular and iconic, I want to talk about Return to the 36 Chambers by Old Dirty Bastard. Not only is Old Dirty Bastard my personal favorite member of the Wu-Tang Clan, but his solo debut is probably my favorite album of their solo works. Sure, this one isn't super artistic and well made, unlike what I've featured so far, but there's just something so raw and authentic to ODB himself about deciding to make the cover of your first album a parody of a food stamps card. It conveys the honest truth about the kind of life he'd live prior to fame in the streets of New York, while still sticking to that playful sense of humor that he was well known for. Also, even though there's a lot visually happening in this cover, it's still not too much to look at. And then we have Bear With Me Here, Up, 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 Up by Annie DeFranco. Okay, with that god-awful title out of the way, I absolutely love this cover. It gives a grungy, almost counterculture vibe, even though this is a folk album. And I just love how bold it is to go with such a weird and experimental cover for such a traditional sounding genre. Annie herself looking down while having her arm overextended to the sky is such a striking image to me. There's also a bit of that late 90s advertising charm mixed into it, as during the time this was released, ads were honestly weird and kinda crazy at the time. Like if you replaced the lettering in her hands, I could see this being an ad for a clothing brand, like Nike or Converse. Or you could just slap a Dorito in her hand and call it a day, to be honest. I think it's a perfect example of the era this came out in. Next, I want to show you one that is very niche, and that's Handyman by Pulp Cruise. I love how animated and lively this album cover is. From the explosive background to the intense look on the character's face, there's just so much action going on within this single frame. I could see this being a panel in a comic book. Also, with how it's drawn, it low-key reminds me of the Boondocks, but with a more traditional painted art style. Not to mention how perfectly the colors blend together and complement each other. Nothing is ripping your eyes away from something else. It's all cohesive and nice to look at. It's like calm while also having a lot happening, and I think that kind of balance is really hard to do well. And last but not least, I thought I'd include my favorite album cover from one of my favorite albums of all time, and that's 2.5 by Amine. Now, a lot of you could probably call this album cover messy, but I personally disagree. I think the visual of Amine getting his mind blown in an explosion of psychedelic colors while wearing large rose-tinted glasses perfectly fits the energetic, playful sound this album has. Also, the thick, visible look of the paint on the stars and the explosion just works so well in contrast to the cutout and faded style the actual picture of Amine has. Not to mention that shade of yellow being so pleasing to my eyes. I wish I had a hoodie that was this exact shade. Not all art needs to be super serious or symbolic, and I think this is a perfect example of why. Like if I saw this in a record store, I would swipe it immediately without even knowing what's on it. And I should know, this is the only album in this video I actually own physically. So in conclusion, I hope that this video makes you stop and really look at the cover next time you listen to music. I mean, in modern times, with streaming being the #1 way people listen to music, it feels like we have lost appreciation for the album cover. It's like most of the time, people only truly acknowledge it either in retrospect or when an album is getting announced. So to anyone who listens to music out there, don't just listen to it, be sure to look at it too. Sure, a lot of cover art may be generic or lazy, but who knows, the next time you listen to an album, you may also find some art that you love. And with that being said, thank you for watching.